So this week's story apparently is the hardest one for me to review and talk about. This is like the sixth take I've tried. It is The Life of Bucky Barnes by Stephrc79 and petite-madame. Petite draws artwork and Steph writes the stories to go with it. It is sweet at times, hilarious at times, and utterly heart-wrenching at others. You're gonna need a box of Kleenex, probably more than one. Just buy stock in a tissue company. It'll be better. There's so much dark in it, but in the same time, there's humor and laughter to lighten it back up. They both understand PTSD in ways that scare the hell out of me, because I really hope neither one of them have ever had to go through any of what it takes to have to understand some of this. Kind of like I was talking about it in Oz's stories, where parents are seeing these completely weird words on their children of, I needed him alive, you asshole. I hope their lives have been great. I don't know them, either one of them personally. I've talked to both of them asking permission to review these stories. I've talked to Steph a couple times about things. Wished her happy birthday last week on her Tumblr when it was her birthday. And I talked to her a couple days ago on Tumblr, say, hey, are you going to have a new chapter up so I can talk about it too? And she said maybe tomorrow, which will be Monday. And she got bad news, so wish her a late happy birthday and tell her life is awesome. It will be eventually. If she decides to tell you her bad news, that's hers to tell, not mine. But it sucked, and I need to smack somebody for her. All of the chapters so far that are up, there's 59. Hopefully 60 will come out tomorrow. They're all amazing chapters. The artwork with each one is just amazing. I'm not sure I have a better word than that for what petite-madame puts out. She not only does it for Avengers, for The Life of Bucky Barnes, but she also has one for the Winchesters in the Supernatural series. If you're interested in that, you should go find it. I will link the Instagram for Bucky Barnes, and the Tumblr pages as well. And obviously the story link. There are so many things I want to tell you, but I don't want to do a 90-minute long video because you'll all stop watching about 10 minutes into it, so I will try not to do that. The Life of Bucky Barnes is the name of the Instagram account Bucky has started. It's to give himself more of a voice, but in a controlled place where he's still safe from the world. It's part of his therapy, getting his words out in us, just getting his words out in general. His therapist came up with it to help deal with his PTSD, and for the most part, throughout the story, it works. There's a setback or two, but that's part of therapy. 5 steps forward and 1 step back. 5 steps forward, 1 step back. Occasionally it's 4 steps back. Who knows? But it starts with Steve leaving Bucky this stupid bear. And he kind of recognizes it, but he can't figure out where he's seen the dumb bear before. And so he takes a picture of the bear and he puts it on Instagram, asking everybody to help him figure out what the stupid bear is. And as soon as he posts it, he realizes it's the horrible Bucky bear from before the war. The thing he hated, because it came with a comic book. And he hated the comic book because it made him look like an idiot. So Steve starts trolling very early on, and it stays through the whole series. And everybody else is a troll too. They just go for it. And there's bad chapters. Bucky has nightmares, obviously. And Steve has nightmares, obviously. But there's cute chapters. Bucky gets hurt just before Halloween, and Steve makes him his own jack-o'-lantern and paints it to look like Bucky, including injuries, and promises to always keep it full of candy, because Bucky has a sweet tooth. And there's chapters with ladybugs and just goofiness. The first nightmare chapter, Bucky can't sleep and he doesn't want to wake up Steve, so he goes out to the living room and snags the bottle of vodka Natasha had given him. And he drinks the whole damn thing. He's lucky he's got the serum, because the rest of us would have been in the ER with alcohol poisoning. Steve gets him back to bed in the next chapter, and that's the photo for that chapter, is Bucky saying, you know, only Captain America could talk me back into bed after such a bad nightmare. And it goes on for a little while with some happy-ish chapters, and then Bucky has another nightmare, and he pulls a gun out from underneath his pillow, and Steve knows it's there, and he's tried to talk him out of sleeping with it, but it's just not something he can do yet. He's not at that place. Unfortunately, not being at that place also means he fires at Steve. Misses, only because Steve knows him well enough to figure out what he's going to do just before he does it. And they take a picture of how scared Bucky looks, just so that Bucky can deal with it. And it helps eventually, but it does take time. Back to the therapy thing, it's not an overnight thing, it's an ongoing process. So they do that. These stories are so heavy, it's hard to talk about them and not give everything away. Even the lighthearted ones occasionally are heavy, because it needs to be to balance out all the dark that Bucky has to deal with. Although I do really want a Steve that will paint me a mini-me pumpkin, because I love Halloween. But my big, tall Steve guy is not an artist, so I'll never get a mini-me pumpkin, but that's okay. Also, Bucky really, really hates the cold. Hates the cold. I don't blame him. If I'd been in cryo, I'd hate the cold too. My boyfriend had almost died or was dead for 70 years because of an iceberg. I'd hate the cold too. So, even in the lightheartedness, even in the dark, there's lightheartedness, I should say. He, not wanting to be cold, will not come out of the comforter. He wraps himself up in it, and it kind of backfires, because he tries to go out to the couch to be warm in the same room as Steve with the fireplace and everything, and ends up burritoing himself into the comforter, and he can't get out of it, and then he falls on the floor. And you're laughing your ass off, and your husband's looking at you like you're a nut. Nothing new. He does this every single story I read. I end up laughing at something. So that one's cute, but, you know. And of course, Steve has nightmares too. He fears losing Bucky. Bucky fears losing him. Bucky fears killing Steve. And they come up with a little ritual of making a giant superhero breakfast, which pretty much is everything in the refrigerator, including dessert. The next chapters after the breakfast are, not all of them are straight Bucky and Steve. Steve leaves for a bit on a mission that Bucky can't go on, and so he's staying at the tower for a couple weeks, and they've been trying to get Clint and Natasha to admit they're seeing each other, and they just won't do it. You know, spies and their secrets. And so Bucky does what he does and follows them around until he can get enough proof that they're seeing each other. Which is hilarious because pretty much, dude, you're courting death. It's Natasha. Stop it. You're gonna die. Because she's gonna kick your ass. And then we get back to, again, buy stocking Kleenex. Because I will tell you right now, chapters 24, 25, and 26 are heart-wrenching. Just like Petite reached in and yanked out your heart, stomped on it 100 times, and put it back into tiny little pieces. Just like dropped it in there and let it go. And Steph ran with that. Bucky is hurt badly on a mission. They can't even find him in the rubble for 3 days. And then they get him back to the hospital, and it's pretty much a full day of surgery and probably a week of medically induced coma before he's healed enough, even with his serum, to be woken up. And this whole time, Steve is thinking Bucky disobeyed an order and opened something he shouldn't have. And so he's thinking the worst after watching his boyfriend die after being missing for 3 days, and Steve really doesn't handle it very well. Which, who would? You spend 4 days trying to will your boyfriend to not be dead after you've already had him be dead for 2 to 3 years, depending on the timeline of the stories. After you've been dead for 70 years. So, death is not something Steve really wants to deal with very well. And I don't blame him. I wouldn't either. Sorry, guys. I'm having a bad hair day. Steve does a few things that, in hindsight, he shouldn't have. He posts a picture to Bucky's Instagram to kind of try and force the issue of Bucky acting recklessly, like they did with the gun incident. Sorry guys, it's late. It's 9 o'clock. I should have done this video tomorrow. Kind of hoping that by forcing the issue, Bucky will think about things before he does them. Only they don't realize Bucky didn't do anything wrong. There was a countdown, and it was too short a time for Bucky to get away from the bomb that was going off. After he wakes up and tells Steve feels like absolute shit. On top of basically grieving, now he's got to deal with the guilt of Bucky not doing what he thought he did. And of course, this leads to Bucky's extended recovery, because even with the serum, it's not Steve's version, and it still takes him a while. It's faster than if any of us had the accident Bucky had. It had killed us, but Bucky survives. He's kind of going a little deep end on his own, because he's stuck on bed rest. And Steve won't let him out of the house. And mostly that's a Steve thing, because Steve is terrified something's going to happen to him while he's not able to take care of himself. So he won't let him out of the house. And when he finally explains that to Bucky, Bucky understands and relents and stops being quite so stir crazy. After that, they take a vacation. They totally deserve it. They go to California. And Steph uses her knowledge from living there, and they find dog parks and beaches and amazing food and urban legend haunted highways. I'm never going down that highway. And then Disneyland. And Disneyland turns out to be a little bit of a clusterfuck. Yeah, Bucky hates the hat. He hates the mouse ear hats. And Disney management doesn't really like his defiant response to the mouse ears. It almost gets him kicked out of Disneyland forever, which would be really bad. Captain America, not in the happiest place on earth. Yeah, that's a bad thing. So that takes a bit of finagling on Steve's part, but they work it out. And then we get to the next weirdness and slightly lighthearted, but what the fuck moment. The Fantastic Four are at the tower. And we all know that Steve Rogers, played by the very wonderful Chris Evans, also Johnny Storm, played by the very wonderful Chris Evans. So the whole double take, spit take, what the fuck moments are there. Bucky does not actually respond very well to a doppelganger of his boyfriend. And then the whole Johnny being a pain in the ass, he tries to convince them both that he's actually a clone of Steve. That does not go over very well. Johnny should have known this. Everybody should have stopped him. Really should have stopped him. They let it go. Eventually they kind of figure it out, and there's pictures, but Johnny, you're an idiot. And then we're back to heart-wrenching again. The Smithsonian is moving the Captain America exhibit back to the Smithsonian. It had been traveling for years, and they're finally bringing it home back all the way to DC. And they want Steve to contribute pieces to it. A big memorial mural of Peggy and the Howling Commandos, and then they want another one of Bucky, the only Howling Commando to give his life in service of his country. This version of the Smithsonian, they're a bunch of fucking assholes. Really, why do you think this is a good thing for Steve to do? It's a horrible thing. It is all of his friends and family painted by him, and they're dead. And it's not right for Steve. The painting is not what's in his head, and he can't get it right, and he's fighting it, and he's fighting it, and he's fighting it. And Bucky is having to watch his boyfriend shred himself for a piece of art that should have never been asked for him to paint. Maybe if you can hear the background stuff, my daughter is talking to her boyfriend about Twilight. So, this is my life. Anyways, lightheartedness in the middle of darkness. At most, Steve should have been asked to approve other artists' work going into the exhibit, but the Smithsonian should have never pressured Steve into doing the piece. It shreds his soul, because he has to go back and revisit all of the people he's lost, and all the grief and heart-wrenching, horrible sorrow he had to deal with. I'm tearing up from talking about this. Steve does it, and it puts a huge strain on Bucky having to watch Steve do this, and it puts a horrible strain on Steve having to do this. Eventually, I mean, they do get it done, but it's a Hail Mary at the end, because Steve is doing last minute changes hours before the curators are coming to pick up the piece from New York, and Bucky and Steve argue. They argue about Steve doing the piece to begin with. Bucky gets pissed, trying to tell Steve he can't do this, he shouldn't do this. And a statue that Steve created gets thrown and broken, and a painting that's extremely important to the both of them is damaged, and Bucky leaves pissed, and Steve can't find him for a good hour or two, which, of course, makes it even worse for Steve. But a stranger in the park gives her opinion and lets Bucky have a different point of view for it, so he decides to stop being quite such a dick about it and just be there for Steve while he can, while he's doing these pieces. And it ends up being 2 separate pieces, and then donating several already completed pieces for the exhibit. And the piece that Petite did for the mural of Bucky's mural, it's amazing, and Steve's in the foreground, and you can see the heart-wrenching sorrow in it as he's painting a picture of, at the time, his dead boyfriend. He's here now, but, you know, when the exhibit was created, they were both dead. And then we're happy again. It's Bucky's birthday. It's slightly past Bucky's birthday. He didn't post anything on the days, but he finally gets around to it. And Natasha gives him an insanely perfect present that nobody should be giving Bucky this present unless they're already on the battlefield. But she gives it to them in their apartment. This is not a brilliant idea, but it leads to an amazing Photoshop by Thor. Photoshop. A couple weeks later. And it's so hilarious. Thor is an amazing photographer. Even with a phone. It's a phone. And he did great. And then we're back to Steve being an idiot. More Bucky than Steve on this one, but kind of both of them. It's been the Science Bros with their sis, because Jane's in on this. Bruce, Tony, and Jane create a holographic sleeve for the arm so that it can pass as human flesh. And Bucky, that would be the child, like an idiot, keeps it from Steve because he doesn't know how Steve's going to react. And then the dumbass posts it on Instagram. And Steve has told him more than once that he gets notifications when Bucky posts things on Instagram. And so the super secret arm sleeve that nobody has seen but Jane, Bruce, and Tony goes online to 2,000, 3,000 plus viewers. Dumbass. Of course Steve sees it before Bucky gets to tell him about it. This is not a good thing. There's some sucking up, some huge sucking up owed to Bruce by Bucky, because Bruce ends up taking Bucky home and having to deal with the emotional roller coaster of Steve seeing Bucky look whole for the first time since he fell from the train. And Yeah. Heart-wrenching again. These two are horribly evil women. I just want you to know that. Why do we have children again? Anyways.
Because we're amazing.
I've been drive-by kissed. Seeing Bucky whole throws Steve for a huge loop for days. Basically, the only way he can deal with all of the emotions of seeing Bucky like that and letting Bucky know that he's okay with him with the metal arm. He doesn't need to cover it up. He doesn't need to replace it. He's fine the way he is to touch the arm as much as he can, kiss it as often as he can, make love to him as much as he can. And at the end, the only way to really make it up is to steal Tony's $1 million car. Yes, I said $1 million car. I'm not going to go look up the name again because I forgot to write it down like an idiot, but it really is $1 million car. There's $1 million car out there, people. It's not a custom job. Well, it is a custom job. Each one's individually made. But holy fucking shit. Who needs $1 million car besides Tony Stark? Tony, can I just have the interest from one of your car payments? For that, you didn't make car payments. You bought the thing outright. I know, but that's not the point. The point is, the interest from one of those car payments would pay off everything I owe. Ever, including my car. I drive a Mini Cooper. Yeah. And then we come to the next story, next chapter. And really, I just have one thing to say about that chapter. Tony, why the fuck do you have Ultron's head? Seriously? Melt that to slag, please. Okay, that rant is done. And then we go on to the next little thing, which is still lighthearted. Pietro, what the fuck? Why would you fuck with Bruce's tea? Bonehead, he can smash you. I don't care how fast you think you are. He will find you and he will smash you. He will pull a Loki. You will be 2 divots in a marble floor. Go read that chapter for yourself. And then we have more aliens and another trip to the hospital for Bucky. It's not that bad. But then we get to the chapter where I actually didn't understand it until like a week ago. Until about 3 weeks ago. I had to go reread the chapter because I had never seen Big Hero 6. So I didn't know what the fuck Baymax was. I'd seen the little white puffball marshmallow dude, but I hadn't actually watched the movie, so I didn't understand it. So after I watched the movie, I went and reread this chapter, and it made so much more sense. So if you haven't watched Big Hero 6 yet, skip the Baymax chapter until you watch the movie, and then it will make sense. Yes. And while Bucky and Steve are in the hospital and getting out, Deadpool decides to fuck with Steph, literally fuck with Steph, and break into Steve and Bucky's apartment and make a cake while telling Steph what to do. He does this to her again, too. He kind of fourth-walled her into making a chapter for his movie release earlier this year, but because she didn't do it in February, she did it in March, he went to Hogwarts and stole a time turner, because he's a dick like that. So, that's a whole nother that's actually a whole nother story, because this isn't a series. So, the boys come home to a giant mess. A giant Deadpool mess. And you can imagine what that is. And it's only chocolate. There's not even any blood involved. It's just chocolate. It's a big mess. Their poor cleaning service. And let's see. Then we're back. Not so lighthearted, but not heart-wrenching. No Kleenex required. other than the fact that Bucky, when he was still recovering, stole a purple velvet coat from Tony. I'm trying to find the picture on my iPad again. The first picture is cute. There's just a bit of a smirk on Bucky's face. Yeah. There we go. Not much color. I will try and put this as a still in the video. I'm hoping it will work. I'm not holding my breath. So there's a little smirk. He tells Steve about how he stole, well, Steve knows that he stole the jacket, but they're talking about it and everything, and he decides to wear the jacket again, only now he's got the short hair instead of the long hair, and the way she's drawn him in this stupid jacket, and they see Pepper, and Pepper realizes it's his coat, because hey, it's Tony's coat, not his. He posted it on Instagram. Pepper follows him on Instagram. She knows he stole the coat, because he said he stole the coat. Bucky, on occasions, you're kind of blonde. But I want you to look at this picture. Again, I will try and put this as a still in the video. I don't know if I can do it. Okay, so, you see how his face is in this? You see that face? Does that not look like Howard Stark to you? It kind of looks like Howard Stark to me. I looked down at that once and went, why did she draw Howard in that jacket? I went, oh shit, that's Bucky. It's just very Howard-esque. It's kind of cute though. And then Bucky is recovering from something else again. No hospital stay this time, just abuse. And he's looking at fox videos. It's a fennec? I'm thinking I'm saying that right. It's a cute, adorable little fox. And yes, I would love one, but apparently they make very horrible pets. And Steve hears this just after Bucky asks for one. Doesn't work. And then the next chapter, not heart-wrenching, but still a little heavy. Bucky and Clint are out on a mission together in Bulgaria, I think. No, Poland. Crap, I don't remember. Bucky gets knocked out, which says a hell of a lot. Wall fell on him again. And Barton has to save their asses, and he has to do it without his hearing aids. And then he gets them out of there with a messed up ankle and several cracked ribs and a concussion. And dude, you're fragile. You don't have the serum. You are not Bucky and Steve. Stop acting like it. You are soft and squishy. I am the squishy mommy. You are the squishy Clint. Remember this. There's a whole thing behind the squishy mommy thing. I keep telling my kids it's their fault I'm fat. Now it's 4th of July, and it's Steve's birthday. And apparently, not out of anything horrible or malice or anything, Bucky used to tell Steve that the fireworks were for his birthday. This is not the only story I've heard this in, but and when he found out that it wasn't really for his birthday, he cried. Because that is kind of mean, but Bucky didn't mean it to be mean. And he kind of gets it turned around so that maybe Steve can accept that, oh, well, I guess maybe the fireworks are for me now. Hey, dude, you're Captain America. It's America's birthday. Yeah, they're for you too, dude. But the birthday chapter for Steve, it comes with shenanigans. Steve shenanigans. It's an E-rated chapter in this series, you need to go find it. Saturday Night Shenanigans. It is very nummy. But even without the shenanigans, there's so much love and everything between these two. Just them getting to be alive in this version of the world is a good thing. The world can only be better for them. And the next chapter, I have a little bit of a rant because 2 hours after I reread this chapter, it's a coffee chapter. Scott Lang is supposed to help Steve with a mission. Steve's running a little bit behind, and so he asks Bucky to meet Scott at the coffee house so that nobody steps on him because he's supposed to be coming in little ant form. Not to be confused with the giant clusterfuck that ends up being Steve Lang in Civil War. We don't talk about that movie. That movie didn't happen. Thank you very much. Fuck you all. So Bucky's there, and there's some problems with Scott's GPS, and he accidentally ends up in Bucky's coffee. So here's little Scott standing in Bucky's coffee. Bucky is a giant coffee snob. He is through the entire series. You don't fuck with Bucky's coffee. Ever. And God forbid the one time Steve ran out of coffee. This was a bad thing. This was a bad day for Bucky. So, I reread this chapter. Bucky's coffee gets anted. And at a stoplight, while I'm waiting for everybody to go, I'm flipping through the news feed on my iPhone, and the Commandant of the Marine Corps says something that irritates the ever-living shit out of me. And I don't care if he shows up at my front door and yells at me for this. But hey, fucknut! You don't tell Marines to put down their fancy coffee. It's a morale thing, dumb shit. Sorry, that was the rant. He said they needed to go back to basics. Okay, I get this. Put down your phone, put down your fancy coffees, and go back to being Marines. Okay, and then you say to go back to digging foxholes. I've known a few Marines. I know several Marines, actually. I don't know how many of them actually dig foxholes anymore. I don't think that tactic really works with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all the other idiots out there trying to kill people because we believe in different gods. Coffee is a morale. It's a morale boost. You have to have it. Bucky understands this. And if he wants a fancy latte, are you going to tell him no? No, I don't think you are, Commandant. I think you're going to go, would you like cream and sugar with that, sir? You are. Because you don't want him pissed at you. So telling the Marines of the United States to put down their fancy coffees is bullshit. You get them any coffee they fucking want. This is my rant, I'm sorry. It really, 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 really irritated me. My dad was a Marine, and I do say was because he didn't have the same mentality as other Marines. But I do know several other Marines, and telling them to put down their coffee, it's pissing me off to the point I'm about in tears again. Don't do it. Don't fuck with a Marine's coffee. Go talk to Gibbs. My other fan fiction addiction. Don't fuck with Marines coffee and you're telling them to put down their fancy coffees. Yes, Leroy Jethro Gibbs only drinks black coffee. But that's not the point. If he drank a frilly, fricking cinnamon latte like Denozo, your ass wouldn't tell him to put it down. You'd hand him the next cup while he used his rifle. And I know you would, because you'd respect Gibbs. So respect all of the Marines under your command. End of rant before I continue. Sorry. Steph, I'm really sorry. I had to throw that in, because it was literally 3 hours. But now, see, we're back to needing to buy stock in Kleenex, because now we're back to hell. Steve gets captured. And Natasha and Phil kind of make some bad decisions on how they handle it with Bucky. They tell him and then basically lock him in one of the stasis pods from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. This was not your most brilliant plan. Steve's been captured, you don't know if he's alive or dead, and you've just told his boyfriend and then locked him in a cage. This is a dumb plan. That was never gonna work out very well for you. Read the chapter. I won't tell you the horrible, horrible shit that goes down in it. Other than the fact that they all come out the other side, and Bucky needs about 16 more therapy sessions with his doctor than he would have if you'd have done something differently. These are horrible chapters. I cried. I cry every time I read them. Heart-wrenching. I don't have a better word for that. It's heart-wrenching. 56 is the next chapter that's horrible. This is where we get Steve back. But in the meantime, idiot terrorists are filming Steve's death. And they think this is a brilliant plan. They think they're going to get their way out of this. And it's not going to happen. Because if you do manage to kill him, obviously they don't, because there's going to be chapter 60 tomorrow. If they did manage to kill Captain America on live TV in front of the entire world, Bucky is going to find you. He's going to turn you into itty-bitty little pieces. But he's going to do it so that you live the absolute longest amount of time possible. And he's Hydra trained. So obviously that amount of time is going to be a lot longer than if it was anybody else in the entire goddamn world. You're fucking morons. Stupid. They get Steve back. They all get healthy again finally. And we get some flirting again. A little giggle. A little happy. And then Bucky flirts with death again. Because he posts a picture of Natasha that he really shouldn't have posted. And Natasha gets evil. And even. Natasha's code name is Black Widow. What is a Black Widow? A spider. Why are you fucking with somebody whose name means death? She brings tarantulas to Steve and Bucky's apartment. I don't like spiders. Spiders are creepy. They have way too fucking many legs. At least 4 too many legs. Kind of 6 too many legs. And way too many eyes. No, I don't like spiders. Spiders are nasty. Especially when you only find 2 out of 3 tarantulas. This is not cool. And this is where Steph has left our group. With a random tarantula missing in their apartment. Yay. So, in all of this, all of the artwork is amazing. All of the story is amazing. Steph's way with words is a talent I bow down to, and I write. I am an author. I am published, and you're better than me. I hate you. No, I love you. You're adorable. There's no big triggers, I don't think, in these. There's some light bondage for Bucky's birthday, which I slightly glossed over on that part. But it's a really good sex scene. You should go find it. Steve's shenanigans. Really good sex scene. You should go find it. Deadpool scene. Kinda goofy. No sex. Unless you count the slobbering dog that, tried to lick his face off. we won't count that. And then we come to the entire subsection of the marriage of Bucky Barnes, which I will save for another day because I'm already at 45 minutes and 18 seconds. And it will probably take me another 45 minutes and 18 seconds to tell you all about that one. Men out there, go read this and figure out how to propose to your fiancés in a way that Steve would have. Because the proposal for Bucky in this story is pretty much the grand gesture every woman would fangirl over for an eternity. If you figure out how to propose to your girlfriend the way Steve does that makes it work for you two, she's gonna say yes, even if you've just pissed her off. And the rings, amazing rings. So, go read this story, subscribe to it, because Steph will be posting more. There's, I can't remember how many photos, I think there's like 70 some odd pictures from Petite so far. I think that's almost 80. Steph occasionally lumps a couple per chapter, depending on the situation. But still, she's got 20 plus to go, and Petite's not stopping. I love you both. Thank you for letting me ramble on about your wonderful talents while I'm doing it badly. Subscribe to this. I did set up a Tumblr page, Yasmina's Armada of Ships. It'll be tagged with this. So follow me there, follow me here, follow them, subscribe to their stories, all of them, any of them, and enjoy. And I will see you next week, hopefully with a better sounding voice.